I don't know it.
Yeah, they also have Matador on here and
Hmm.
Dale
No.
What are you
Charlotte.
looking at? What is this?
It's on Twitter.
The Charlotte supporters posted their songs.
Oh, that Queen's firm. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I tend to think Queens means Cincinnati.
Oh, that's a fight. If you
Yeah.
Oh,
which
really?
is the actual Queen City? Is it Charlotte or Cincinnati? Because they both claim it.
I love that there's a fight. This is great. I just hope someone gets sued, and it's a podcast.
Charlotte needs to back off because they're owning that minty stuff going on. They've got the mint. They just need to back away from the Queen City thing.
Yeah, but Charlotte's actually named after a queen. Cincinnati isn't.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's fair.
That's fair. Wouldn't it be funny if we consider ourselves like the French city or something like stupid like that?
Well, people did talk about having like a Florida League Cup at some point with Detroit and Louisville and Montreal.
Montreal, yeah.
We need a New Orleans.
The Jesters don't exist anymore, but they did have a Florida League in there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't remember that.
Who knows what the New Orleans USL team will have in their crest? I bet it'll have a Fleur de lis.
As long as their colors are purple and gold.
I was going to say, they've got to go hard into Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
So, Phil, on these video things, if you hover over each one, you can see the help text on them, and that'll tell you which one to click on for what. Like one says Carnell contract, one says Lutz transfer window.
Yes. No, I figured that out. Thank you. So we'll start with the second one. Okay. Well, you guys ready to dig in?
Let's go, man.
Here we go. Ooh, who's that?
That's an NA. That's an
NA. Before we kick in, I've realized, I don't know if you've noticed, Matt, but a beer in the first half and a Manhattan in the second half, never again. I got a little, I got a little too much in the second half. I don't know if you noticed.
You got a little heated.
I did. That's what happens. I get more emotional about things. So, yeah. So never again. I've corrected this.
That's fair.
Here we go. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you so much for joining us in a preseason version of the show. And I got all three of my typical soccer friends that you're going to find here at Flyover Footy. We have Santiago, Stu, and Matt Baker. Santiago, let's start with you, man. How's it going?
Doing great. Just waiting for February 20th. Now the countdown is down to 19 days. So I'm just looking forward to being there at City Park. And now the team was here this week. So I had a chance to go to training and go to some of the press conferences. So it's here. It's almost here. So very excited.
Yeah, we're about to break the seal on February, and that means we're getting very, very close. It's very strange. Stuart, how's it going? I'm so glad you could make it tonight, man. What's up?
Oh, it's going awesome. I was at the Botanical Gardens yesterday afternoon, saw a bunch of people wearing city gear. I know the city is amped and ready for the season to start.
I love when you go somewhere. There are two things that I look forward to. One is that you typically run into Matt Baker, and the second is that you always get a good jersey count on city gear, which is nice. Matt, how's it going, man? What's new for you?
Oh, I've apparently missed Stu by a couple days because we'll be at the Botanical Garden on Saturday morning.
So, perfect
segue right into that. I've been fantastic. This week has been absolutely fun. Like Santi said, the team's been back in town. I feel dialed in. I feel like jittery hyped right now because we had the press conference on Monday. We had the Lutz and Diego conference on Wednesday, another press conference on Thursday with training. It's just so much information, so much hype, so much excitement. I'm ready to ride all of these games that we get to actually watch when the club's in California. I'm hyped. I'm ready to go.
Me too. Like the shift from off-season nothing to all the stuff we got today has been, I'm thrilled. I mean, my heart is racing every time I open up something new on Twitter. I get to find out more and more information on City. And a lot of that's coming from Santiago, Matt Baker, of course. Like, make sure you guys are following them on Instagram because they're bringing a lot of really good, fresh news on the team this week. And the biggest one, I think, was obviously going to be this press conference, the Bradley Carnell contract extension. We had Diego Giuliani and Luz Pfannenstiel in on it. And so, like, those are always my favorite press conferences when we can ask Lutz a bunch of questions. The journalists with a big J delivered the goods on this one. We got a lot of good information, and we will start here with the Bradley Carnell extension. And we have a nice little clip here. We're going to try something new. Matt's giddy over there. I'm excited to show it as well. So enjoy this clip, and then we're going to talk about it.
Able to speak to any of the specifics to Bradley Carnell's contract extension and how long it goes for?
Yeah, the contract is a 2-year contract, so it takes them until the end of 2025. That represents the commitment really on both sides. I think after last season and how well the season went for us, but also his reputation. Obviously selected to be the second best coach in the league, and by many of you guys and colleagues also in the league. And we see him day to day. And we already saw what Lutz and the group saw in him when he was hired. He didn't have a lot of head coach experience before coming, but they all saw in him some great potential. And he's definitely proven that last year. There was going to be interest for sure. And we sat down together and we all felt that this was the right thing to do. Bradley's super committed to this project and is happy here. His family's here. And we also felt that with just 1 year, we had seen enough to want to commit to a longer term with him.
Good stuff, Matt. What did you break down that clip for us? Give us the information here again.
Yeah, the reason the question was asked the way it was, obviously, the press release did not include the terms. It didn't include the length. We were actually wondering when he was extended what his current contract was, what the new one went until. So there were too many vague details going on here, and that was the onus of the question. And I think you're hearing from Diego Giuliani on kind of what they were doing with Bradley Carnell initially. And throughout the week, we found out, I think today Carnell ended up saying that he did have a contract for this year. So whether it was a 1 year with the club option or a 2-year contract on his initial deal, he wasn't going into this season without a contract. What appears to have happened is they renegotiated the contract for this year. And so it's a new 2-year contract starting this year, goes until the end of 2025. And it makes sense. Diego said, he referred to the Bradley Carnell's first year as a head coach, absolute first year as a professional head coach in this type of a setting. And so it was a trial for him just as much as it was for St. Louis as an expansion side. The massive success on the field for the club, along with his own personal success, Bradley Carnell's in finishing second in the Coach of the Year race, kind of just said what everybody had been thinking throughout the season, that he was a highly successful first-year head coach. He earned an extension. He deserves to stick with the club for a little bit longer, and they're rewarding him for that. And his contract mirrors what some of the other players' contracts look like, carrying through the next couple of years. And so I think this is also something that Diego said towards the end of his comments. They wanted to get ahead of the game as in regards to headhunting Bradley Carnell. They knew that other MLS teams would be circling him at some point, given his success. So they wanted to lock him down while they could. And I think this speaks to all of that.
Massive. I think the biggest detail, as you mentioned there, Matt, was that this isn't necessarily just an extension. It's a renegotiation. So whatever contract he had before, now we just know that it's been redone and it goes through 2025, perhaps because other teams were circling, which is a fun detail to think about a little too much. Stuart, what did you think about this extension that was announced today?
Well, an extension's always a good sign that, you want people looking and maybe trying to poach your best coaches, your best players. That's going to happen. I was actually just looking at if there are any openings in the Red Bulls ecosystem, and I don't think there are. However, Gerhard Struber is still the head coach of Red Bulls Salzburg, who replaced Bradley Carnell at Red Bulls, New York Red Bulls, not Red Bull Salzburg. So there might always be a situation where he attracts attention from Salzburg or Leipzig as an assistant, maybe off the bat. We know they like to keep within, Barcelona has Barca DNA and Red Bull has Red Bull DNA. So this might have been a opportunity to not only push away MLS teams that are interested, but also European teams.
Yeah, I mean, he also played in the Bundesliga. He would fit in. This style fits most Bundesliga teams, so that would be fun to see as well. Santiago, what do you think about that announcement?
I think it's great. To be honest, when it was announced yesterday morning, the first thing I thought about was like, what? In my mind, he probably had a contract until 2025, 26 already. Kind of, Matt was mentioning that now kind of mirrors the contracts for some players. In my mind, he had a contract like that because obviously when he was signed, those details weren't announced. But to me, it was like a given that his contract was also a longer term. So it was a surprise, but it's great. It's very deserved. He did a great job last year with the team. He's a leader. The players like him, and when he talks, he always talks about how he has been developing as a coach and how he has learned from mistakes. So I think it's great that the team is rewarding him, and at the same time, he's gonna be able to continue building on the success he had last year. Yes, year two may be a little bit more difficult now that other teams know your style, but Carnell and his coaching staff will be ready for the challenge, and I know we'll get more into that. But there will be some different things, some different looks there. So overall, yeah, I think it's a great decision by the club. Have him for a couple more years, and also knowing that there was some interest out there, just get ahead of the game and lock him down when you can.
You know, Santi, what you first said there, you thought initially his contract went through 25, 26, something like that. Think back to what all Carnell's been through with this club already. Coming into being hired at the beginning of 2022, where he had come off the assistant job, he had been the interim coach. He was, from what we understand, at least looked at for some head coaching vacancies. MLS has a litany of head coaching vacancies all the time. And he was willing to come to St. Louis for what ended up, now we know it was either a 1-and-1 or a 2-year deal at the most, and spent all of that time. It wasn't just 2 years, but he spent 3 years of his life here with that type of a contract expectation. Yeah. And he planted his family here. His family loves the area, and he was willing to bet on himself. That's my big takeaway, is willing to bet on himself, invest all of this time into a first-year expansion club that is going to be his, at this point, what he's known for. And that's what is going to be people's first expectation, first recollection about him as a head coach, is what he did or what he would have done with an expansion side. He bet on himself so hard in that regard that this isn't just the reward for a job well done in his first year, but I think it's just a reward for Bradley Carnell believing in himself.
I love that. And you know, to expand on what you guys both just said, is that, you know, it is a development thing for Bradley as well. And his contract, you know, it shows that. And he can say even to his players, be like, listen, you're not the only one that's got to prove himself around here. You know, like, I make too many bad moves, I'm out of here too. We all got to improve. We all got to perform. And if we don't, then we know what happens, right? We're on the way out, you know, on the real. And so he can ask that of his players more easily because now they know what kind of contract he was on. And I just love that. And I love it from Lutz as well. You know, it's an expectation from top to bottom. So anyway, love to see that. Super happy. I don't know if we've actually said this enough because we focus too much on the nerdy stuff. We're all ecstatic about this. We think Bradley's amazing. We're happy he got the extension. I think we want to keep him here as long as we can without holding him back, right? Just like the players. So that'll be a fun one to watch in the next couple of years. Next news, we got to bring this up next because we have been losing our minds about this, whether it's in the front scenes or behind the scenes, guys. Like, we have been talking about this green card situation for months now, for real. And then honestly, in DMs, we've been probably talking about it for over a year. And it's been, you know, mind numbing, the fact that nothing has been said about it. But now it's not surprising that something has been said, and it's because there's extreme action in that regard. So Matt, would you like to talk about the green card process, the big news that was just released?
The big news is Joachim Nilsson and Edu Leuven are not with the team as we're recording this on Thursday, February 1st, because they are in Sweden and Germany, respectively, traveling back to finish their green card process. Hallelujah. Things that we've been talking about for upwards of a year now. We've tracked other teams' international players. We've checked in on what the green card process actually looks like. We had the rumor and information on Selmir Pedro. It has gone on and on and on. And finally, two of our OG internationals who arrived with City 2 back in 2022 are finally getting green cards. And what this means for St. Louis City is every single year, MLS teams are given 8 international roster slots. They can fill those with players who don't have green cards, don't have citizenship, they're not nationals to the United States. And St. Louis City, at the current moment, have 9 of those. We already traded Nashville SC for a 2024 international slot, so we are full up. By these two obtaining green cards, they will not occupy 2 of those international slots, meaning 2 are going to be open for this coming year. And yes, Soccer Zombie, one of the predominant thoughts is this could be a spot for Jose Kajima, our first round super draft pick. Kajima, if he makes the team, if he makes the first team, he will occupy an international roster slot. We now have 2 open, which also adds to the fact that Lutz Pfannenstiel loves to keep his options open going into the season. Whether it is on the lookout for another striker, or something else that might come up this summer, he loves to leave himself wiggle room. That's a calling card of his in his tenure with St. Louis City so far. So these two getting green cards at this moment in time is fantastic news for St. Louis.
It is. Santiago, we got to go to you because you've been with me on this, losing your mind a little bit. Like, what is going on? And here it is, big news.
It is great news. It will give the team a lot of flexibility. And we have been waiting so long. It drives me crazy when I see a player that was also signed in 2022 and already has his green card. Even players that join teams for the 2023 season, I have seen at least one already has a green card. So it drives me crazy. But it's a complicated process, and from asking around, you guys cover this. Every case is different. So it's great to see that we finally have some movement on this, and it just gives the team flexibility. I tried to ask Lutz yesterday about Berkey, Klaus, and Thomas Ostrak, but he said he wasn't ready to comment on that. But it sounds like
Didn't he tell you to call the like international offices or something? Or
yeah, he mentioned immigration, but
yeah.
but yeah, he couldn't get any more. But I tried.
I appreciate that attempt. Stuart, I mean, you've been dealing with, your favorite club, or I don't know, second favorite club, whatever you want to say, but you've been dealing with Fulham in Europe, and this window is just closed today. And, this does leave a slot open for Kijima. Does it also open a slot for another player? I don't know if you have thoughts on that, or if you just want to kind of comment on the green cards in general.
Another player, as in Mitrovic.
Does this help us sign a striker,
Oh, no,
or something else?
Fulham got Broja across the line, it sounds like. No, with the green cards, it's obviously a big deal. I believe you guys talked about how Nico transferring to Italy, having his Italian citizenship was so important. Yeah, no.
Breaking
Matt,
news.
You're usually on the leading tip of the spear on that. But yeah, Serie A has the 2 non-EU player limit. So Nico having his Italian passport bypass that. But it across all leagues there are these rules. So this isn't just like a MLS odd rule with international slots. It's pretty standard in a lot of leagues. I mean, we've been waiting for this. There's not much to say. I don't know what Lutz is going to do, but I'm pretty sure he has an ace up his sleeve or an idea of what to do, whether it's, before the primary window closes or when the secondary opens. We'll find out.
Absolutely. Now, one of those players taking up one of... Oh, I'm so sorry, Santiago. Please go.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to comment and that caught my attention yesterday during the press conference, and it was also said by Lutz. He said, yeah, the internal slots are important, but to me, it's also important to have domestic players, and young local players. So I like that he emphasized on that. That's very important too. Not having a bunch of international players, because you also need to develop the local talent and find domestic players. So I like that, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe the club wasn't in a rush to get the green cards, and maybe that's why it didn't happen within a year, because they also value the domestic players and developing young local players. So that caught my attention when he mentioned it.
Yeah, yeah, and we had that good debate last week, and I think it's going to continue through the season. Is bringing in another striker versus someone like Caden Glover getting more minutes, right? That's definitely what he's speaking to right there, exactly. But with those international slots, we have Nicholas Dewar coming in. He's taking up one of those slots, right, Matt? I don't have that wrong. Give us some details on that, because it's really exciting to me that he was able to get in time before this first preseason match.
Yeah, we've talked about Nicholas Dewar as a player, the Danish Danish Youth International coming in to play the left back position. He's a two-way player. We've talked about his physical attributes before, but the exciting thing now is we get to see him in person. Santi and I saw him in training on Thursday, and he's integrating with the team now. He met with Bradley Carnell face-to-face Monday morning for the first time. He started his physicals and baselines on Monday. By Wednesday, he was a participant in training, and by Thursday, he had not yet finished with those baselines, so he was kind of a neutral in practice, what they call, so he was kind of being limited in what he was doing. Bradley Carnell said that he may not play against the Galaxy, but he's going to see minutes later at Coachella, LAFC, New York Red Bulls. Those games we can expect to see Nicholas Dewar participate. Bradley Carnell also said, and this is important because we had been trying to figure out, okay, is Dewar going to be eligible, or will he be physically fit and able and ready to go for the start of the season? Is this going to be a Jabulu Blom type situation where he arrives late in preseason and so he's not fully ready to go, maybe fully 90-minute fit to start the season? Bradley Carnell expects that barring any setbacks, Nicholas Dewar should be ready to go for that first match against Houston. And so that's incredibly exciting that we're able to get him in. He showed up, fit, healthy, ready to go, and he looks to be passing all of his baselines, and we can get him slotted in at that left back slot as kind of a two-way player on that side to complement what Tomas Totland is doing on the right-hand side. Very exciting addition to St. Louis City that we're not wasting any time in getting to see.
Yeah, I hope I'm not like jumping the gun here, but Santiago, you can talk on this too, because I know you're up to date on it. That CCC roster was released without Totland, without Dewar on it, without Thoresen on it, which was making people, a little bit, they got excited about it, let's say, to the point where Matt kind of had to release and calm everybody down a little bit on it. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, but it sounds like that's not a big deal, right?
Yeah. It's not the final roster. It was more like there was a deadline to submit the initial roster, and the two new guys didn't have their ITC certificate yet, so they couldn't include it on the roster. I'm not sure why Thoresen wasn't included, but Lutz clarified that they'll be in the roster, so there will be changes the next time he needs to be submitted. So we should see Dewar and Totland and Tor in CONCACAF Champions Cup, and it was encouraging what Bradley Carnell said about that he should be available for the first game, because at least to me, when he was signed, I had about the Jabulu Blom situation. Obviously, he ended up playing most of that first game just because Indiana Basilev got injured, but in theory he wasn't ready yet, but he ended up playing, and then he had basically he had to be ready just because of an injury. But it's great. It's great that everybody will be available for February 20th. Not Rasmus Alm, but the rest of the guys should be available for that debut in CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Well, you helped me out there. You mentioned Rasmus Alm, and I'm going to read off of Matt's notes a little bit so we can kind of get Stuart involved in this conversation as well. Confirmed the surgery was mid-November, around November 16th. He has been solo training on the field, as you guys have been posting on Twitter, on X, and it was announced that Alm is traveling with the team to California and might even get some minutes at the end of Coachella. Stuart, do you want to talk about the importance of Alm, or even talking about Thorson and these fullbacks going into preseason, looks like we'll have, to some extent, the full roster available for preseason, which is really nice.
Yeah, let's knock on wood on that. We've seen how preseason has affected Inter Miami already, and I don't know if you want to talk about that in the wind down. But
I'll add it to the notes here. Yes,
we need some drinks to talk about that one.
Injury and travel can be rough, but they're already 2 weeks into their preseason matches, and hopefully we don't have similar luck as they're going through right now. I think Alm's importance speaks for itself, just seeing how we performed without him when he was injured. I mean, he, I think, was the really underappreciated guy last year, other than maybe, I know Indy got a lot of love, but Indy, I think, was still underappreciated too. So the sooner we get Alm healthy and truly healthy, and we don't want to rush him back and get a recurring nagging injury, I think that bodes great for our CCC campaign and for our regular season expectations.
Anything you'd like to add, Matt?
Yeah, Rasmus Alm is one of the two big reasons why I'm not worried about signing a striker. So the quicker he gets back to health, the better. I know you mentioned Thorson, and we'll talk about Thorson a little bit when we talk about Lutz's comments at the presser. But the overall idea of do we need to sign a striker is heavily contingent upon the production of Knutby Thorson and the health of Rasmus Alm. Because this isn't going to be really touched on at all on this show as much, but just reading between the lines on some comments that Bradley Carnell's made, it's hard not to draw a dotted line to they're wanting to take a little more caution with Caden Glover and bringing him along. He's coming with them to California, to Coachella, but Bradley Carnell keeps referring to him related to his age, his youth, his inexperience. Same conversations with some of the City 2 guys. It's not a knock on Glover by any means. It just speaks to his development and what they're willing to do in bringing him along and not putting too much pressure on him too soon. So I know that when Nico Gioacchini was transferred out, we were talking about that. The thought was, okay, we're down to Klaus, Sam, and Caden Glover. I don't necessarily want to, I'm not even sure I want to go forward with this thinking that Caden Glover is someone to be counted on in that role as he's a third option for a two-striker system. I kind of want to go into this thinking as we have Klaus and Sam and Knutby Thorson and Rasmus Alm as our four strikers who can play in a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2 type of a system. We could also go 4-2-3-1, in which case that provides some cover. But the point is, looking at Caden Glover, giving him a little bit of grace on how he starts the season, progressing him. He's only 16, and there's a lot to still develop and grow without putting too much pressure on his shoulders, which pressure is something that Carnell also mentioned with Rasmus Alm, wanting to move him along at a progression that makes sense for his recovery from surgery, not pushing him because he does a good enough job pushing himself. Carnell said that specifically and explicitly today. So Alm pressures himself enough. The club is not going to put too much on him, but Knutby Thorson producing and how quickly Alm comes back, I think that's going to also impact some of the flexibility Lutz looks at as far as the striker position goes before the summer.
And we can't forget, like, they're not giving up on the 4-4-2. I just want to reiterate kind of what Matt said, that that preseason game against Nashville, the first formation was a 4-4-2, and we can't forget, we keep doing it. McSorley is in the picture to some extent, right? McScorley is what everyone's been calling him in preseason here. And so there's enough players, as Matt was covering here, to do what they want to do. They're not going to be limited. They're not going to not do a two-striker system because of personnel, because they think they've got plenty of cover, as Matt was saying there. So nothing to worry about there. Things will go on as they were before with who we got in the roster right now. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's continue the preview of the Coachella. Is it really called Goalchella?
No, not in real life, but that's
what we call it. This is a McScorley kind of thing.
Yes.
Goalchella, got it. Thank you.
It's not a music festival.
Right. Okay. Well, Matt, can you give us some details? Looks like there's a lot to cover here, actually.
Yeah, I feel going into Goalchella is an extension of what we did with Nashville, because we've only played one preseason match. This club was supposed to have played 2. They couldn't play Columbus because they started preseason late. So after Florida, the Nashville game is kind of the jumping off point. And what Carnell was able to tell us on Thursday is that the LA Galaxy game on Saturday, which everybody's excited for because we finally get to watch St. Louis City play, should be another game of 2 45-minute halves. He's going to have those 2 rosters, those 2 lineups, just like he did last week with Nashville. So don't read too much into who's playing with who necessarily. Bradley Carnell was more alluding to the idea of what happened last week in the second half, where with the Nashville game in the second half, it was a 3-5-2. We had 3 center backs. And he wasn't so much all about we're working on making sure we can run a 3-5-2. It was individual moments, individual elements of that, such as putting pressure on Michael Wenzel and the center backs to see how they handle an opportunity to play by themselves, and the center midfielder to see how he might handle being the lone pivot, being the only midfielder above 3 defenders. Those kind of scenarios. So it's situational based in trying to improve and get guys up to speed and see what they can handle, more so than it is saying holistically, I want to try this 3-5-2 and see how it works from the back to the front. So don't necessarily look too much into the formation. He was very clear about that multiple times this week because I asked him. But just the nature of the number of players that we have, I would expect McSorley plays. I would expect everybody who's healthy to play. You're not going to have Eddie Leuven. You're not going to have Joachim Nilsson. You're not going to have Rasmus Alm. You're not going to have Nicholas Dewar to start. So immediately you're down to basically 2 groups of 10, just about, of guys that are playing. Kajima, we hope, gets more time. Carnell said he could have played against Nashville, but he didn't. And so that's kind of what I look for against the LA Galaxy. Now, I did talk to News Across the Galaxy podcast out in LA last night on Wednesday, and they were as pessimistic as you can imagine, just from a sheer standpoint of they don't know what their roster looks like. Both LA teams are dealing with this, where they've had such turnover, then they're trying to find their own identities. And so they don't really know what they're going to get, even as far as personnel. I was listing off the number of players that I think might find time, whether it's 45 and 45 or elsewhere. Now we know it's 45-45. They couldn't name more than 2 or 3 players they knew for sure would play. And so I think this is going to be more interesting to me to just see how St. Louis plays in and of themselves, more so than how they're handling an offensive attack from the Galaxy, because it could be like Nashville's second half where they throw trialists, they throw an academy player out there. You never know. I'm excited to see St. Louis play and to see if St. Louis plays with the ball a little bit more. That's another common theme we've heard during this week of the team being back, is that Knut Thorson told us, Javulu Blom told us, even Bradley Carnell's alluded to the fact that that's one thing that he's taking it upon himself to implement, a little more playing on the ball. So how do you handle, how can you break down some of these low presses or low blocks that teams are throwing at us? How do you handle it when they give you the ball and say, beat us? Well, that's something that the team's adding to their repertoire in addition to sticking to their high pressing principles. So I'm interested to see what of that actually gets implemented in these 2 groups of 45 and kind of just see how people play off each other. The Salio Indy combination, the Knut Thorson Sam combination from last week. See if they start gelling in those ways, because you need Knut and Sam to click. You need guys like Salio and Indy to click because they're going to be on the same field together so much in the start of the season. So there's a lot to like about this first game, but then after that, because the next time we do a pod, it'll be after the LAFC match, they're going to start progressing them. They're going to start ramping up the minutes, getting up to 60, 75. And Bradley Carnell said, for all the fans, when you're watching these preseason matches, if you see a guy get to about 75 minutes, Carnell considers him good for 90. And so you might not see the full 90 in some of these, but that's what he said directly. That was a quote, a word for word quote, is when a guy gets up to 75, he's good for 90. And so that's how you can expect to ramp up this preseason, and excited to see who shines. And like this past week with Nashville, the last thing I'll say is Tomas Toltland was the player that Bradley Carnell highlighted very specifically against Nashville as showing something really special, really key in his first minutes in a City kit. I'm looking to see who might be a standout player and separate themselves to start earning, because there's some really competitive spots, really competitive competitions going on in some of these positions, especially our midfield, to see who really breaks through. You assume it's Blom and Leuven and then enter any other player. Who's going to separate themselves? Is it Indy? Is it Salio up top? Is it going to be Nukvi Thorson? Is it going to be Tomas Ostrak, AZ Jackson? That's what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis, we should be so happy. I know it hasn't been like an exciting, light the world on fire off season with signings, but we are in such a good position to just make a couple tweaks and be happy with our roster. Whereas LA Galaxy was, they're having to make wholesale changes because it didn't go well last year. So that's the good side of just a couple signings in this off season here. But it's so exciting that we get to see this game, Santiago and Stu. Let's start with you, Santiago. Matt kind of ended there with some of the things he'd like to see in preseason. What would you guys like to see in preseason? Now that we get to watch a couple games here, I'm really excited about that. But what are you hoping for in preseason here, Santiago?
Yeah, so definitely the most exciting thing is that it will be streamed. Last season we didn't have a chance to see the team in any preseason action, so that's great. And just looking forward to see like guys that maybe didn't have a lot of minutes last year, and guys that this year are supposed to basically fill in the gap for Nico Joaquini. Lutz has mentioned Nook Vitorison a few times. Bradley mentioned him too. So looking forward to what he will be able to do now with a full preseason. And also he spent some time with him last year, and he had some minutes in some games, but towards the end of the season he didn't see the field match. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Nook Vitorison with a whole preseason and just the knowledge he got last year will be able to do. And hey, he could be Nico's replacement, as Lutz mentioned it during the press conference, that when he was brought last year, wasn't to replace a player, it was more to have another option. So looking forward to what he will be able to do. And I'm always a big Celio fan, and from the comments from that game against Nashville, it looks like he's having a great preseason. So I'm also looking forward to seeing him on the field and see if he can earn more minutes this year.
Same question for you, Stuart. What do you think about preseason? You're an avid veteran of preseason watching with St. Louis FC. I always enjoyed running into you in those games. So what do you think?
Well, I'm more wondering what Carnell is not going to show us in the Galaxy game, because it's broadcast to people. What is he going to keep close to his chest? Because he likes to keep things hidden, as I think most coaches would. So is he going to show everything, or is he going to, put out a formation that he doesn't intend to actually play, or is he just testing everything out? I'm going to guess he's going to keep some secrets. I have no idea what those secrets will be, but I will be a nice conspirator and try to figure out what they are. What I'm looking forward, just seeing them out there. It's always fun just seeing the players play again is a real sign. It's, first Christmas is coming again. It's a sign that the season's about to start. So seeing them kick around the ball in an actual match is what I'm looking forward to the most. However, yeah, I am a little sad seeing that Celio is no longer Celio on the back of his kit. It's now C. Pompeo. He had an iconic thing going. That's a little sad.
On the other hand, we do have Dewar with the number 44, so that's instant classic in St. Louis. So looking.
So
forward
is Emo's gonna sponsor him?
He has no idea what he stepped into with that.
No, I think Emo's will just naturally be plastered on his 44 on his back, just like no one did anything. It just showed up there. Matt, I'm going to give your choice. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. Matt, where would you like to go next? Because we have some clips we could do, but we could also recap that first friendly with Nashville.
Yeah, I don't know. There's too much left to recap. I mean,
I agree.
We didn't see too much of it, and the success against the trialists and the academy players in the second half. I'm glad we scored a couple goals to make it respectable. But these 3 games, things could be vastly different between this week and next. This week, we also know, in addition to the players who won't be there, we know that Jose Kojima should see some more minutes. Carson Locker is traveling with the club as well, should provide some cover for Eddie Leuven not being there. Michael Wenzel is also traveling. He was there in Florida. He's been training with the team this entire time from City 2, but he'll also provide cover for Joachim Nilsson being out. And yeah, we learned a lot. I think one of the things I kind of want to focus on here is the Lutz and Diego press conference. So we do have a couple interesting clips as we shift away from Coachella and some of the matches to some of the higher level things to look at. Phil, how are we doing on time here?
About 8 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah, let's look at the first. Let's look at the first one, because let's go back to the conversation about signing a player. So one of the things that Lutz was asked from me was regarding some of those rumors that we heard. So I want to spend a couple minutes talking about Lutz's answer to some of those rumors and what might be going into his thought process in signing a striker, because I find it fascinating.
All right, here we go.
It makes it easier on the one hand and much more complicated on the other, because obviously the way so far we operate a lot on the European market, where a big numbers of European players or European-based players will be available again in the summer, because that's when the window becomes big. Right now, the window in Europe is pretty small. You normally get players who are looking for playing time. You get players a team wants to replace or wants to get rid of, or you're getting overpriced players. So definitely it's a difficult market window for us right now. But we found our ways around, and I think, obviously January is for us our main window, which is extremely long open, and that it's open till April. It gives us another 3 months. So 3 months to watch. There will be still developments in European teams, and once a team have nothing to play for, suddenly players will become available again, which you won't be able to sign right.
And Phil, one of the reasons I love this answer is because I wanted Lutz's take on the transfer window that closed today. As we stream this, February 1st, a lot of the European transfer windows are officially closed, but the MLS transfer window is wide open. It opened January 31st. It goes until April 23rd. So the difficulties in bringing in a player whose home country's window is closed, Lutz speaking to the fact that the club might not be able to replace them. The club might have shifting priorities. They will eventually come up on a free. And so there's a lot of nuances that go into the club wanting to release them, but also the fact that, and I didn't consider this, the club is every club in Europe is in a position right now on February 1st. What that position might look like come April 1st could be vastly different. They might fall out of contention. They might be a selling club who doesn't have much of an ability to sell within their home region. And so then Lutz can swoop in and steal a player at a bargain. So just because he's not making a move at the end of the European transfer window or the end of the predominantly global transfer window doesn't mean he won't. He's waiting for a deal, right? He's waiting for a better opportunity, waiting for players' values to fall and for a fire sale, essentially. So that opportunity is going to be there, which lends a lot of credence to the idea of getting through the first part of the season with who you have now, seeing how they shake out. You see what you have in Thorson, you give him a genuine shot. You see what you have in this year's version of Sam Adeniran. You see how Klaus progresses when he's healthy. And then if you still need to bring in a player, he's not looking at things isolated. He doesn't wait and see what happens in match 1, 2, and 3 and say, okay, now I'm ready to pull the trigger. I need to go look. He's got guys ready to go on his board. Cedric Tukert was one of those that we'll talk about in a little while, but that's an example of a player he's been targeting, and the deal just didn't happen to be right. But he's always thinking about this. It's always a conversation on his board. It's always a conversation about what value can I get for this player that we've been targeting. And he had a comment about window shopping as well, about how you're walking down shopping, you see something you really love there, and the idea that you just want that so bad and you need to wait for it to go on sale, or you don't want to walk down the street, see something else and say, oh yeah, that looks good, I'm just going to take that because it's cheaper right now, or I can bring it in right now. I need to have something. He's a lot more cognizant of the long-term aspects of this, and that's just incredibly exciting. And I love the fact that they're so aware and so managing these window differences. I find that fascinating.
Santiago and Stu, I'm going to give you guys the last thoughts here. Start with Santiago. What do you think about all of that in the transfer window? This is news to me, this whole I never realized it. Matt's so good at finding these little intricate details. The fact that the MLS window's open through April and people can come in, even though the European window's closed, they can still send people out. That's news to me. That's really cool. So Santiago, any thoughts on the transfer window?
Yeah, no, very quick since we're short on time. I really like the approach and thought process that Lutz has for the transfer window. The club doesn't need to rush it. And Diego mentioned, he was like, yeah, we're always looking. We have lists of players. So if the right opportunity comes, we will pull the trigger. So I like the approach and giving the guys that are here a legitimate chance to show what they can do. I think is the right thing to do. And if something happens before April, what is it, April 23rd?
Yep.
Before April 23rd, great. If not, we'll probably see something in the summer window, depending on how Nubi Torison, Rasmus Alm, Celio, and other players are doing.
Stuart, final thoughts. You can touch on anything you want here. We got the transfer window, we've got preseason, we have a lot coming up. So just touch on whatever you'd like to close with here.
Oh yeah, and Abo made a good point. We can still sign Tukert, but yeah, he wouldn't join us until the end of his contract. It'd be a pre-contract signing, and it, who knows what his wage demands would be at that point. But there is actually FIFA does have a website where you can see all the transfer windows globally, and there are still some open. So we'll see how the team moves, but we're in a luxurious position that we don't have to rush. We're not panicking. We're not getting relegated. And hopefully we load up and we can go deep in the CCC.
Love it.
And Abo in chat is absolutely right. That speaks his comments about City can still negotiate with him because he's on a free within 6 months. So they can come to an agreement with the player. His home club Hanover cannot replace him because their transfer window is closed. That's the big thing that Lutz was talking about and having to manage, is that when teams can't replace players, they become much more unwilling to sell them at a price that Lutz is willing to pay. That's kind of the takeaway for a lot of that.
Just on a technicality here, because maybe I misunderstood it. If they decided to sell him or another player, any other player that's on a European contract, even though they can't be replaced, if they're not going to use that player, could they send him as soon as March or April?
As long as it's to a league like MLS whose incoming transfer window is still open, yeah.
Great. So it is possible, though unlikely with Tuchert with his situation. All right. I wanted to clear that up because I can kind of get those things kind of wrong. A lot more to come in the second half of our show here. So thank you for joining us if you're listening on the big 550 KTRS. We appreciate that. We have a podcast where we go on another 30 minutes or so. It might be a little longer tonight. We got a lot more stuff we can cover, but it's just a laid back conversation about all the things we just feel like chatting about. You can join us in the chat as well online on anywhere you can watch this show or anywhere you get your socials. So please do join us if you can. Thank you so much for listening either way. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye. Okay. Was that okay?
It was perfect.
It was a bit of a scatterbrain closing, but it worked out.
Stick around, grab a drink in chat, and we'll be right back. Oh, I love that. It looks like the Luligan pod over at Schlafly is ending. So Chris Gebhardt has been able to join us for the wind down.
Oh, that was tonight.
I've made my show notes a mess because I covered like half of the thing that I wanted to spend like 20 minutes on, but I knew we wouldn't be able to get that in the main part, and I did love that we were able to get part of it.
I'm good at actually going up and down in random parts of the notes.
Clearly are, and that's one of the things. Like you're a right brain guy, I'm a left brain or something like that.
Oh,
Because it crushes my soul to
that makes sense.
like when you talked about let's start with Carnell, I like furiously removed it from down at the bottom and moved it from the middle and moved it to the top just because I couldn't handle it.
Oh, I thought it was already at the top. Did I mess that up? I'm sorry.
You were right. We should have opened with that. It was the biggest news of the week.
Oh, okay. So do you want to highlight anything you want to cover again that we already did cover? You said you want to go back for more details on something?
No.
Oh,
It was
okay.
the Lutz and Diego part. We're basically there.
Okay. No,
What
actually,
about that video that we didn't get to play?
should we start with that?
Let's start with that. It's because it's actually kind of a fun. Anybody who's read, and we could say this, but I could lead into it. And anybody who's read the Transfermarkt article from Manuel Veth will appreciate this video. But yeah,
We should definitely mention the Luligan live pod. Stu, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit.
Nice, man.
if you need to make an Irish exit, feel free.
Anything you want to talk about before you go? Any favorites from the notes today?
No, I'm just so I'm going to Brazil, Sao Paulo, and Rio this summer in June, and I'm trying to figure out. I know they played like 90 games a year, and that's an exaggeration, but like 70 games a year, 60 games a year. So I have to figure out their June schedule for those two, so I can slip out of my classwork and go to a match or two. But if anyone has any Rio or Sao Paulo connections, just let me know. Or Lima, I'll be over in Peru for a little bit too. Nothing too exciting. Very boring trip, to be honest, but I'd like to get some footy in there.
I mean, do you think our Brazilian guys would walk you around if we got them down there? Is that something we need to work on?
Brazilian, I was in Celio. I've been to Fortaleza before, actually, for the World Cup. So I've never talked to him about it, but I've probably been on the same boardwalk as him.
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
I forget where Klaus is from. Do you guys remember? I don't either. Well, anyway.
No, I don't.
We'll start with the video, and then we'll touch on that a little bit. That'd be really cool. Because the chat actually kind of went crazy on that. I don't know if you saw that.
Love it. Hey, I'm ready this time when you're ready to come back on.
Welcome, everyone, to the wind down. I kind of came in hot there. I was laughing, and then I had to bring it back down to the wind down level. We're going to talk about, we're going to continue a little bit here, first of all, with the Lutz and Diego press conference. We got a clip here. We're just going to start with that and just see where it takes us. Please enjoy.
Lutz, it's been reported that Cedric Tuchert was one of the strikers you were targeting, but in that same report, 6 players were listed as being on your list to sign this transfer window. Is there any truth to 5 remaining that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, the list is, growing and shrinking every day. Like, if I look at my phone now, the list is bigger again, and if I arrive up in the office, it's smaller again. So that's something which is very, very mobile and unpredictable. But I would, I like, Tom knows I like to talk in pictures, so I think you have to put it, if you go shopping and you look for something special for a wedding, if you find the perfect thing you really like, that's the thing you have to get. If you see something which is okay, I maybe wear it once or twice, but I'm not so convinced, stay away from it, Matt. And I think that's the way we're approaching exactly at the moment the striker market.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Stay-
good. I hadn't seen that yet.
There it
away,
is.
Stay away from it, Matt. That's what he tells me about things you might like, but yeah, that was what I was alluding to, and I'm glad we got it little bit of the KTRS part, a little bit on the wind down. I loved that because it really speaks to what he's looking for in a player as far as how much he's willing to wait. So the idea that a lot of people are asking right now is, do you think we're going to sign a player? And I could come up with like specific criteria of what I think would fit the bill. Obviously, he's not looking to spend DP money. He said that in the article that I was referencing on Transfermarkt. He's obviously looking at the type of player that he's been tracking for a long time. It's not going to be somebody who hasn't been on his radar. I think the reason that I keep saying the only people that know who we're going to sign is Lutz, because only Lutz has his list, and it's going to come from a list of somebody that he's been tracking for a long time. I look back at Thomas Totland as the type of player that we can use as a kind of a beacon for what we're looking for here. It's somebody who Lutz had been tracking Totland since Lutz was with Germany in Germany. That's how long ago he's been tracking Totland. And knowing that they've been pursuing him in St. Louis for about a year, that's the kind of runway we're talking about. We're talking about a guy who's Lutz has been seeing whose contracts are coming up, who can I get from clubs that may be, middling, they may be looking to sell a player, who can I swoop in on and say, this has been my guy the entire time, and now I think I can get him at a deal. It's going to be that person that Lutz saw at the Champs-Élysées, and he has been looking at that for the past 3 years.
You guys think? I have thoughts, but I'm going to wait till you guys give your thoughts. Santiago, Stu.
Yeah,
Well, I
no,
mean, yeah.
Go ahead, Stu. Go ahead.
No, I mean, Lutz and Carnell are going to be looking 3 windows in the future, 2 windows in the future, hopefully. So, yeah, like Matt said, they're going to be looking at, he'll have guys or contacts with agents that he's been talking to for 2 or 3 years. And hopefully he's looking at who's going to replace, knock on wood, Josh Arrow when he transfers to Birmingham City in next January or something. So that's just the nature of the business. There's a constant churn and transient nature to how the league works, but at least we're not kind of stuck in place compared to Matt. You mentioned some of the LA Galaxy guys, like they were strung along with the Divock Origi loan from Nottingham Forest rumors that I think fell through, but at least we weren't subject to that kind of teasing this window, and we haven't been with Lutz for the most part.
What do you think, Santiago? Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, really quick in the chat, Billy is talking about our biggest outgoing will eventually be Lutz, and I just want to pop in real quick that Diego actually addressed this. I think it was Tom Timmerman who asked it in the press conference. Diego was obviously, a little bit coy about it, saying that we're happy to have him for several more years, and they look to continue to build on the success of the first in the years to come. And without committing to anything, without acknowledging the supposed we're entering year 4 of a 5-year plan. I think that's something to keep in the back of your mind, but I think we've got Lutz for at least a couple more years.
Hey, so maybe next January we will see the announcement about Lutz's extension.
Yes, please.
There it is.
Yeah, but no, just my thoughts. And I said it on the first portion. I like the approach, and very patient. He's not trying to just pull the trigger because there is a need for a player, and it may not be the right player, especially for the system the team plays. Not anybody will be a good fit. So I like that they are so detail oriented, and they are patient on pulling the trigger. And yeah, as he said, like that list changes every day with outgoing transfers in different leagues, different loans in other leagues. So yeah, I like the approach, and I like that there is a plan, and that they also like offer all those details. Yeah, we have list of players, and they change So I like the insight they provided there, and I like the approach.
Every once in a while, someone in a press conference will say something, and I'll be like, I don't know. I feel like that's like coach speak or something like that. When Lutz just now said, you got to find the right thing, the perfect thing, and that's the one you buy. When he said that, it felt like the truest thing that's come out of his mouth ever, because everyone he brings in, it just feels like, yep, that looks like the perfect player. Yes, that looks like someone he's been waiting to bring in for a long time. Like Klaus felt like that. So like Leuven, I mean, several of our players, but like especially the ones that have been coming in from Europe that have been clearly checked out for a very long time. And I'm not even saying they're all going to work out, but it does feel like, clearly we all know that Lutz has a good eye, and when he's happy about something, it feels like it is the right move. And these fullbacks, I think I have a good feeling about it in that way. So,
and that's the thing, right? We joke in Lutz we trust, but the number of times he's hit so far in the early trajectory of St. Louis City is pretty wild and led directly to the success we've had. And when you hear him with such conviction, to your point, Phil, because I think that's one of my favorite things, and you're so spot on, is that you could say all this coach speak, you could give non-answers, and yeah, Lutz is good about giving non-answers when he needs to. But when he gives these kind of metaphors and he's so passionate and really describing and painting the picture about the type of player that he's looking for, giving you insight into the backstory of what his process is, it makes when the moves happen that much more impactful. You see a Nicholas Dewar, you see a Tomas Totland, and yeah, we don't have a whole lot of video on them. We haven't been playing with them in EAFC for months and months. Like they're just not household names. But when you see Lutz speak so passionately and so with such conviction about his process and what he's looking for, that's what makes you buy in immediately when you see him sign a player for 2, 3, 4 years and you can't find that many highlights on them, but you see what they offer and you hear Lutz quotes and you know that's what his process is. So that's why you're willing to take that kind of a leap of faith to truly believe and get behind what he's doing.
Yep. Let's pivot quickly. I don't know how long we have Stuart here, but it sounds like, Stuart, you have a pretty exciting semester coming up with school. I gather. Can you fill us in on these details of a trip to Brazil? Is that correct?
Oh yeah, it's just part of the program. I know Byron Tim, actually, I was talking to him a few weeks ago. He's also with I'm in St. Louis University School of Business right now. So he's an alumni. So part of the program I'm in, we will be traveling for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to South America. Mostly boring board meetings, that kind of stuff, which you would expect from an MBA program. But hopefully there'll be some exciting excuses to, see some football or soccer. And last time I was in Brazil was the World Cup, and that was obviously high excitement and incredible. So I'm trying to temper my expectations, but I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think, we got to give a shout. Someone's going to hear this. If anyone that is a Brazilian that plays for St. Louis City wants to give Stu any tips on what to do in Brazil, we're open to these kinds of
DMs
actions.
are open.
Yeah, that's right. Hit us up, slide right in there. So that's super exciting, Stu, and I'm really glad we got to hear about that a little bit. And maybe we send a camera with you. Would you hook us up with some footage if we were like, film as much as you can and we did something with it?
I think most of the time I'm going to be in just board meetings, and that's boring. Boring as
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, very boring. I'm not going to cuss, but yeah.
That's fair.
But no, if I get out and see some football or something on the beach, that's always fun to see.
Food.
But if I get to some matches, which is my main goal, and I think I'll be able to swing it, then I'll definitely get some pictures, maybe swing some interviews if I could.
I hope so. We'll work on that. Love that. Good stuff, Stu. Matt, we have so much. Where would you like to go next? I'm just leaving it to you, bud.
Well, I'll pick up off of STL Soccer News' quote in chat or comment in chat. So far, the only real question mark is Thor, but I'm positive on him. And you're following in Lutz We Trust, you should be positive on him. This was the player that actually, whether he intended to or not, Lutz more or less drew a straight line from Nico Gioacchini replacement to Knut Thorsen. He pointed directly to Thor's signing last summer as a reason why he might not be overly ambitious to sign a replacement for Nico right away and be able to go back to that thing he's seen in the window a long time ago that he's waiting for the price to be right on. Knut Thorsen was brought in last summer as a player with an eye towards this year. Lutz said it at least twice last year, once when he was signed in the summer, and then once at the end of the season. He likened him to Marcanic. And we know Anthony Marcanic played a little bit more regularly than Knut Thorsen, but I point to the circumstances. What did we have going on at left back last year, at the end of last year? We had Kyle Hebert, a converted center back, who had his own fair share of difficulties here and there, and we had Anthony Marcanic. So we gave the opportunity to Marcanic, and he ran with it. Those were our only options. What did we have for options at forward, second striker, the position that Knut Thorsen is actually being talked about to star in a little more heavily this year? We had a returning Klaus from injury. He played all down the stretch. We had a returned and hot Sam Adeniran. He was hot down the stretch, and we let him play his fair share of minutes. And oh yeah, we had Nico Gioacchini, the guy who played 2,000 minutes last year. Those three players up front were not going anywhere. It was a log jam. Knut Thorsen appeared in 9 games. He started 1, and that 1 was the only time he played more than 45 minutes. Production, what we saw from him, capabilities, none of that had anything to do with what we saw from Knut Thorsen last year. If you want somebody to replace Nico Gioacchini's 2,000 minutes, Thorsen can do that. What we need to see, and what we don't have any reason to believe isn't there, it's just one of those unprovens, just like Sam Adeniran was unproven when he came back from loan last year at an MLS level, is goal scoring. And how can he contribute? How can he create chances? What does he look like next to Klaus over a prolonged period of time? The Klaus-Sam Adeniran partnership ended up working out phenomenally at the end of last year. When City was hot in those games, and yes, City had a lot of ups and downs on the back half of 2023, but their ups definitely coincided with Sam Adeniran and Klaus performing well together. That's something we can carry into this year. And now Knut Thorsen will have that opportunity to step in to be a Nico Gioacchini replacement, as I think Sam is looking to ascend more towards at least nearing that 2,000 minute mark that Nico was able to provide. So you're seeing guys step up based on their last year performances and what we actually expect to see proof in of what Knut Thorsen was brought in to do for this year. That's the biggest thing that I think is my takeaway for Knut.
Someone I saw on Twitter said that just having Klaus healthy all season would kill a bunch of those minutes too, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's something to remember. I thought that was a really good point. Stuart, what do you think about this Knut Thorsen conversation, second striker, about the whole situation there?
I mean, he had just last summer to adjust to coming to the U.S. Klaus and a lot of other guys, Leuven, Berkey, they came over, Nielsen, and they had a lot of time to adjust. It coming to a new country, especially from Iceland to Germany to Belgium to the US, it's a hugely different culture. So those are things that he was sorting through on the fly, and also dealing with, new teammates, new expectations. This is a reset year. So we're going to judge him on how he's doing this year, not on last year, because that was really, Marcanic was the player of that window who made an impact. Now going forward, Nukvi is the one who could be the player of impact from that window. And that's how we got to look at it. He has the talent, he has the ability to be a big deal, and that's what we have to look at it. I don't think he lived up to expectations currently, but of course, with Nico leaving, he has the chance to now. And if Lutz has confidence in him, I think we should too.
Great. These comments kind of echo what you said there. Billy J saying that, kind of asking whether Thor just needs to acclimate like City 2 for our first teamers. Our first teamers came into City 2 well before the first season of MLS. And I think we've kind of forgotten how helpful that might have been, actually. SDL City Italian says, I'm not worried about goal production. Sam had 8 goals in 950 minutes compared to Nico, who had 10 and 2100 minutes. I love that stat. I'm glad you brought that in at that time. STL City Italian. That's a good point. Santiago, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, just to echo on the Nico comment that he had 10 goals in 2100 minutes. He's a great player, and he did great things last year. But if you go back and look at goals and stats, the last time he scored a goal for City was on August 20th against that kind of coincided with Klaus coming back, so, and he also got injured. But his production the second half of the season or after Leagues Cup wasn't the same as it was the first part of the season. And yeah, getting a healthy Klaus is gonna be huge. And yeah, the big question is what Nugby Torison can do. I agree. Like him coming last year could be compared to when the other seven guys came in 22 and played for CD2. He basically used that period in 2023 to get acclimated. He played some minutes. He even scored a goal. But it had always been said that he was a player for 2024 and going forward. And now that opportunity is here, and hopefully he will run with it and prove everybody. A lot of people like are not really excited about him just because they look at his minutes and his production last year, but we know that that's not the way to look at it, and people shouldn't make conclusions and assumptions from what he did last year. This is basically like a reset, like Stu said, and hopefully it'll be good for him.
Yeah, and I just think he needs to get up to the level, because if you look what he did with his former clubs in Belgium and Iceland, he plays similar to a second striker, even if he's playing in the left wing position. He is a great presser. He came in really good shape. I remember them saying that last year, and he did. He's a good presser. He does a good job in the press, and that's kind of worry number one, right? When you bring in a player from Europe, are they going to be able to keep up with the pace and do a good job pressing? So that's the first thing that needs to happen with City. But where City has been weak, in my opinion, is that whole breaking down a low block. And for that, like, we have a lot of players who are really good in transition, speedy. You got the center backs on their heels. But what Thorson's really good at is kind of being that sneaky guy that is always in a really good position to score at any given moment, and kind of someone that you'll see center backs and fullbacks as he's passing from an outside position toward the middle of the box, even in toward the back of the box, they'll lose track of him, and someone will be smart enough to find him in space, and he'll score a goal. He's a good finisher. He's a better finisher than most wingers, I would say. You know, I'm not saying he's like a plus finisher, but I will say he's better than average for a winger. And so I think he's going to be central to especially those games. And this is just me looking at footage. I could be dead wrong. He might just end up being the best transition player we could have. But I think from what I've seen in my amateur eye, that he's going to be really vital for those games against teams that sit in a low block, because I think he's just that sneaky guy who I won't repeat what I said, but I think he's going to be big for that. Sam will be too. Not that the other strikers won't be, but I would look to him being a starter or a sub against teams like Minnesota, or, you know, teams that are going to just like park the bus on us.
I think his off the ball movements are going to be important in that aspect. If you think of intelligent and really skilled dribblers who can draw two players to you, you think of Celio Pompeu as Exhibit A. If you think of Nukvi Thorson, in what he's talented with the ball, but I like what you're saying, and a lot of the highlights that he has shown and what we saw in limited minutes last year, he's got a good off the ball ability to move from the wing to the channel. And if you can spread out players in a low block, create a little bit of space, and then have players skilled enough to find that gap and then be fed the ball, that's how you can get nice shots with high percentage chances off. And Nukvi Thorson offers a lot of that.
Hey, Phil, and the game where we saw some glimpses of what he can do, and he actually scored a goal, was against FC Dallas. which they play in a low block. That game, they play with 10 men for a long time, and it was very difficult to break down, and he did a good job at that game.
Yeah, and I think his goal against Kansas City too was not that they were sitting back, but it was a similar situation. It wasn't like a counterattack.
Kansas City was the only game he actually played the full 90, and I think the FC Dallas game was when Thor and Marcanic actually scored together.
Yeah. Wasn't it their first or second game with the team in general? Yeah, that was amazing. You gotta love that. Estiel Soccer News. Celio as well is really good at breaking down a low block, as we saw in the playoffs, for different reasons in a totally different way, right? Dribbly guys are just really good at pulling people out of position. I look forward to seeing Celio, especially in teams with a low block. Extra time. People keep mentioning extra time. Should we talk about this? Because I don't remember exactly what they said. I read what's his name's article on us that was like somewhat on and somewhat, I feel like, off. I don't feel like he's ever super up on St. Louis. Anyway, Matt Doyle, that's what I'm talking about. But what they say on extra time, and fill me in, everybody.
Playoff predictions, extra time, like STL City Italian in the chat. Extra time has this bottom of the playoff picture. So he asks, and I think this is a good question: what seven other teams will be ahead of us? That's a good way to kind of move the conversation, because I get the sense that the knock on St. Louis is twofold from a national perspective. Number one, they expect regression, and that's expected from their expectations. Just like we expected them to pick us finishing last because they didn't know anything about us, I expect them to predict that we're going to have a massive regression, a la Austin FC. So no surprise there. But the other one is, it's almost like fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you type of a thing. And last year they didn't take into consideration what we had done to bring in our internationals in 2022, the type of system we had been building, the success of the academy, City 2 to the top team. Nobody was giving any credit for anything beyond surface level. This is an expansion team without any known player. This year, the knock is we didn't bring in anybody to enhance what we had. And in fact, we just lost our tied for leading goal scorer. So surface level, you look at just those few things and you say, well, yeah, this team's not just going to regress, but they're going to be passed over by teams like FC Dallas, who had a major signing this week, by potentially LA Galaxy, who also just had a major signing, by Seattle Sounders, who just signed a young DP, their first in their franchise history, by the Colorado Rapids, by Real Salt Lake. All these teams who are making significant signings or seeing their young players start to develop into more significant cogs in their wheels. So if we're looking at and I don't know who they picked to finish above St. Louis, but if I were to pick 7 teams that I would be most concerned about, not considering the fact that I don't think St. Louis is going to finish 8th or at the bottom of the playoff picture. Take that out of the equation for now. But if I were to pick 7 teams that I were worried about, I would look to Colorado, making a huge leap from last year. I'd look to FC Dallas. I would potentially look to the LA Galaxy, but I would also look to the Portland Timbers, who made some increases, not just in their staff. Well, you could call Phil Neville an increase depending on how you want to, but they've made some changes. I would also look to Real Salt Lake and Seattle Sounders. I don't know if that was 7. That's about 7. But those teams in particular, I think, could give us trouble. But that's at the same time, everything that Extra Time's predicting, I think, is surface level. So you have to take what they say with a grain of salt, because they're not digging into the weeds. They're seeing what transfer is Tom Bogert willing to report on, because it makes a splash, right? What multi-million-dollar deals are happening of MLS teams bringing players in. And
that's no joke.
It's not. No, I'm dead serious on that. If Tom Bogert's going to report on something, Extra Time's going to give it the time of day to where they're going to update their analysis based on that. And if you look to how many signings St. Louis, and this isn't a knock on Bogert, it's not a knock on Extra Time. That's just, they have to cover an entire league, guys. Right. This isn't something that they can go in the weeds of every team on. So I give them a little bit of grace in that regard, even though I'm still willing to use their standings as poster board material. But I give them grace on the overall who they're willing to cover, because they also need clicks. They need likes. They need subscriptions to their YouTube. They need all that. And if they're going to, on a national level, they want to attract viewers for the sexy names.
Well, we'd also be pissed off if they didn't cover St. Louis. I mean, they gotta comment, right?
We often are, though.
Why? Yeah, I mean, they don't do it enough even so. But like, I just want to say that like I think it's pretty clear that they follow the stats, they follow the big signings, and since like we haven't gotten those, we're just not going to stick out. But also that Doyle article, I want to say his last article on St. Louis was dead on when he was talking about why St. Louis might not be good enough in the playoffs. He did a great job not just saying that underlying stats are against us. He described those underlying stats. He backed up his examples. He did a great job. But on this one, he said, his biggest comment on St. Louis was the fact that we lost Stroud and Bartlett. And if I can say the worst thing I can say here, he had a couple other good things to say. But I think the worst thing to say here is that if that's your argument against St. Louis City, then I think you're just looking at the stats and you're not watching the games. And Extra Time fans will understand exactly what I'm saying there because gotta love those guys. I think they did a great job. But if you think that St. Louis City is not going to be good because of those two players leaving, then you're just not paying a very close attention.
Yeah, I haven't listened to Extra Time, but I was just reading the article from Matt Doyle on MLSsoccer.com for the Western Conference depth charts, and I don't know, but he said the same thing in another article a few days ago. Basically, he keeps saying that City needs to find a replacement for Stroud, and also mentions that the move of Stroud and Bartlett to bring Dorkin, that the trade was kind of a head scratching move, and doesn't give much credit to Chris Dorkin. But I don't know.
That's true.
Like that's more bulletin board material, I think. And I don't know why he focuses so much on Stroud. Yeah, Stroud had good production, and we all know that 50% of St. Louis loves Stroud, the other 50% doesn't much, and we even have that on this spot. So I don't think a replacement needs to be found for him. Like we have a lot of wingers and players that fill that position. But in terms of aggression, he has been calling that out for a long time, even since last year. There could be some regression. The team may not be at the top of the table, but I think it will be competitive and make playoffs, and hopefully advance in the playoffs. Which should be the goal for this year. Win at least one playoff series. Is what I would love to see.
And I don't know if Matt, you were saying this, but if St. Louis is in the bottom of the playoffs, I don't care. They have so many competitions this year. I'd actually be fine with it. And I don't think it's unlikely per se. And I want to talk about Ostrog next, but Matt, looks like you want to comment on that.
Yeah, just on that front. And this is, I keep carrying the banner for this mindset is there's gonna be some downs, and I would rather they happen earlier in the season. If fixture congestion is a deal for us, where we either progress longer in CONCACAF Champions Cup or we progress longer in the US Open Cup, I would rather our MLS regular season form dip early, and we, as much as I hate to use this as the analogy, strike while the iron's hot, like Sporting KC did last year.
Yeah,
a historically poor start.
Yeah.
And they caught fire when they needed to. They made the playoffs, and they won some playoff games. It was at our expense, and that sucks. And we're never going to live that down. But that gives us something to learn from. They said it at the end of last year, and they said it at the beginning of this year, that they know the rigors of an MLS season now, and they know what they need to do to get hot late. So if we're sitting here in June and we are in that 8, 9, 10 spot, I'm not going to be too worried. I'm going to be looking forward to what are they going to be doing this summer to make sure that they catch fire when they need to. And it's a long haul of a season, and we're going to lose sight of that eventually. At this point, it's a long season, and we're going to lose sight of that. And I'm not gonna look down on anybody that does, because we're going to do it too on this show. We're going to get into June or July, and we're going to say what is wrong with this team if they're in that outside looking in position, and we're going to lose sight of what could happen, because it hasn't happened yet, and we're in the show me state, and we want to see that happen. But this is my preseason. we're not yet into our full preseason preview of the entire season, but this thought has to be in the back of our mind somewhere. You can be upset at whatever form we're going through at any given time, but if you can see the light at the end of the tunnel of there's promise, there's health on the other end of League's Cup, and we know what we need to do, that's make or break time, then that's something to hold on to if we go through some struggles in May or June.
Yeah, I think this podcast could be, we're very honest about being guilty of overanalyzing everything. I love the comment that we got from Carnell on Matt and, your comments, and I'm as guilty as you are, if not more so, on overanalyzing lineups and stuff like that. It made me so happy to see Carnell kind of tease you about that this week. But what we're not guilty of is I think we're really good at looking at the long haul and being positive about, not going crazy about the negatives. And I think, Matt, your tweets about Thorson this week are a perfect example that the world was freaking out about something silly, and Matt came in with common sense reactions. And I think you can come here for that kind of stuff. If you're feeling emotional about a St. Louis City problem, if you're scared that something might be going bad, we're here to probably give you some kind of silver lining, and even back it up with facts and that kind of thing. So that's where you can come for that kind of information for sure. I think we might lead the city in that kind of stuff for all of our faults. But let's talk about Ostrak for a split second. I'm wearing this Cologne jersey, which is where he came from.
Yeah.
So I just have to jump on this. We got a comment from Adam Tenhouse, and how a couple questions about whether we think Ostrak fitting this year, if he'll be good, whether we've been hearing much about him in preseason. No, the answer is no, we've not been hearing much in preseason. There's a clip of him making some amazing moves, but if we keep overanalyzing and over-focusing on breaking down a low block, we still got to remember that St. Louis's bread and butter is high pressing, working in transition, and that's where Ostrak is going to shine. All of his special moments with Cologne in Bundesliga and in DFB Pokal was like in transition. This man is a menace on the transition. He's so good on a counterattack, and he also, as we saw last year, found himself in some really good spaces, using that extra energy as a sub, especially to find the goal, sometimes in set pieces, that kind of stuff. So we know he's a quality player. He's someone that I think, been the highest on in this podcast, and I'm a little scared about it because we haven't heard much about Ostrak in this preseason. I think he's going to come good. I think he's a perfect player for St. Louis, and I think his ceiling is very high, but I might be wrong. It's too soon to say, but I at least wanted to mention him.
Lutz made a very brief comment yesterday, and sorry, I don't remember exactly his words, but he said something like he was in good form, something like that. I don't have the exact quote, but it was very brief too. But that caught my attention that he mentioned Ostrak.
Yeah, good. We'll just see what comes of it. I'm glad we brought it up. Just someone to remember that, yes, we did lose Stroud, but I think Ostrak is pretty good as well and a similar player in some regards. Matt, I've been talking a lot. Where should we go next? There's plenty to cover here. A lot of people requesting things like the away kit. What will it look like? The Miami situation, someone requested. There's an EPSL final versus the Columbus Crew Academy coming up. And then there's a bunch of other topics that we haven't touched on.
Yeah, the away kit, I think the only thing I can really offer to that is it has to be something that juxtaposes against the City Red that we're keeping this year. So if you think of MLS doesn't usually like to do two dark kits for a club, but sometimes they'll do two very, very contrasting kits. So as long as you can wear a kit that goes against another team's home kit, that's usually okay. Or if you need to wear your City Red when you go against them. So if St. Louis comes out with a River Blue, they were able to sell a MLS essentially on the fact that all of the blue teams in the league, City Red would go well against as an easy contrast. So River Blue is actually fairly different than City Red as far as like if we were playing the San Jose Earthquakes, if we were playing NYCFC, these blue type teams, Charlotte, Chicago Fire is going back to red, but Sporting KC, even with their dark blue, like if you're playing teams like that, I think City Red would make an interesting enough contrast that River Blue is not out of the realm of possibility. But regardless of what it looks like, I would love if we had some kind of river motif. I think the confluence, if not now, then soon, needs to be incorporated into a kit. They went with the arch and the arch paneling for the City Red kit. They went with City Park as an homage for the away kit. So drawing from some of these other, I'm waiting for the story from Peter Wood and from all of the creatives at the club in where their inspiration is coming from, because there's so many iconic iconography places and things in St. Louis, in and around St. Louis, that they can draw from. So they have inspiration for years and years to come. Whatever they pick, how are they going to craft it meaningfully into a beautiful second kit that they should have, I think they have had more time to develop too. Because the other thing about the away kit that we currently have from 23 is it wasn't given, I think, enough time and focus to be rolled out. It was the old Adidas template. It was only going to be worn for a year. So they obviously prioritized the City Red kit in what they were having Adidas focus on. So maybe this one has a little more pizzazz to it as well.
Is the away kit only 1 or is it also a 2 year like for the second one?
It should be
Usually.
2 year. Yeah,
Okay.
we should now be on a 2 year cycle for both. I think that was another reason they wanted a 1 year away kit, is so that they could offer a new kit every single year versus 2 new kits, nothing, 2 new kits. So now that, because Adidas is on basically an 18-month, 2 year cycle for developing kits, now they can get on board with every single other year we'll get a new kit, or every single year we'll get a new kit.
They know me well. As an aside, the goalkeeper kits look sexy this year. The black one
That
is
should be
so
the
nice.
away kit. I'm
It's
kidding.
good.
With the red stripe.
I think I would love to see a yellow away kit or a home kit at some point. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Love the Confluence shout. That is, oh boy. I
And
would love to see something like that.
we should be on the docket here at maybe as early as 2025 for a third kit, because it's based on sales.
Nice.
And rumor
Right.
is St. Louis long hit that 100,000 mark. So we're getting a new away kit now. And Billy J in chat mentioned
Nice.
the away kit was released February 17th last season. So we should be around 2 weeks from when we're recording this. 2025 is when we can start looking forward to a potential third kit.
And a checker kit. Someone did the shout with the blue with the checkers in the chat. That would be nice as well, if possible. What's next, Matt?
Do you want to talk about Inter Miami? They lost 6-0 on the day we're recording this. They have had a terrible preseason on their tour as far as results go. It seems like everybody's trying to take their pot shots at Miami in the results, the injured players that we touched on earlier. It's basically a dream for anybody who wants to find a reason to hate on MLS, which is why I'm getting very annoyed with the narrative that's occurring. I didn't like the fact that, I like the fact that Miami was doing this initially. They're not my team. I don't care if they wear themselves out in preseason. But the all-star team that they've built had the potential to go on this highlight tour and say, this is essentially an MLS ambassador team. This team is representing MLS on this global stage. Al Hilal, which is like the second best team in Saudi Arabia. The Al Nasser, Cristiano Ronaldo's team. These are top tier teams. Ronaldo didn't play in this match, but Al Nasser beat them 6-0. And so these are drubbings that they're taking. They're injured. They're losing players. It's not doing what it was meant to do, and that's the unfortunate thing. And I don't, like I said,
or is it?
I think it's supposed to me, I've always thought this was supposed to be market MLS. I don't care about.
Oh, okay.
Right. Miami's earning bank, no doubt. And MLS is probably earning bank too. But maybe this is the altruistic part in me. But when I think of things like Leagues Cup, when I think of things like Miami going on this world tour, yes, there's obvious dollar aspects to it. And that's probably the ultimate root of everything, is making the most money. But there are legitimate opportunities here to increase the brand, the awareness, and the notoriety of MLS, of soccer in the United States. And this is not doing that.
That's well said. I agree with you. I've changed my mind. Santiago, a lot of people are going off on the travel. Was it thousands or millions of miles that they're going to cover in preseason?
Yeah. It's a long trip for them, and yeah, I like the idea at the beginning too. Like, let's see what Miami can do against these Saudi Arabia teams, especially because Ronaldo recently said that the level there be compared to the level for League One in France. I was hoping, I don't care about Inter Miami, but I will be hopefully they will have competitive games and beat these top Saudi Arabia teams. Obviously, it didn't happen, and it's too bad that now they are starting to lose players. And you could think of it like, yeah, but it's not like they're not missing one of the well-known players, but they have lost two young players, Facundo Farias, who last year came mid-season and had impact, scored goals, and Benjamin Cremashi, a young player that I really like. So those are guys that do things that maybe people don't see, but it's too bad that they're starting to get injured players. And who knows? Who knows? Yeah, it's preseason, but I don't know. I don't know if red flags should be going up or not, but we'll see if Miami can show the form they show in Leagues Cup and some of the games after that. But it's a long season, and losing some of these players have an impact for them.
They're also sacrificing themselves, and it's more than just playing these matches. I think it was Sergio Busquets played 90 minutes today. The amount of minutes that Messi played into 70th, 80th minute, the amount of minutes that they're giving these guys in this preseason all-star type tour is insane, given the fact that they have just as many competitions upcoming that City does. They're writing these north of 30-year-olds who, yes, they have been otherworldly and they are still top elite tier in MLS. They're going to break down at the end of the season. When we talk about St. Louis needing to get hot at the end of the season, everything Miami is doing is ensuring that they won't get hot at the end of the season.
Yeah, we'll have to watch that. Last thing I'm going to make sure we talk about just quickly is that St. Louis City's UPSL team is going to be playing Columbus Crew Academy in the final for the UPSL Premier League, Premier One. I forgot what it's called, but it's in Irvine, California. It's Friday, February 2nd. Wait, it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
It's the semifinal. They call it the National League Finals or whatever, but it's
thank you.
The group of four. So this is the semifinal, and the final I think is on Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And both are in California, correct?
Yeah, and we talked to Bradley on Thursday about if his team's planning on going and seeing them, and it seemed like that could be a possibility if timing works out. The flight for the club is tomorrow, so it depends on if they move on to the final, if they're able to go. It could be. I mean, it would be fun to see the big club go support the U21s.
I will love that. I will love that. But yeah, looking forward to that game. It will be on YouTube on the UPSL channel. So yeah, just looking forward to seeing the guys last night. The guys tomorrow night, and Luis Switcher has done a great things with this team. So I'm looking forward to seeing if they can be a Columbus Crew. I was thinking if you think about MLS Next Pro, we didn't play them in MLS, but play them in Leagues Cup. We haven't. St. Louis hasn't been able to beat Columbus yet, so maybe tomorrow night will be that first win against a Columbus Crew team.
I don't think people are appreciating just how much of a rivalry this has become from an organizational level, like top to bottom. St. Louis and Columbus, and it's a testament to both teams' ability to put out high level teams at all levels. Development is insane for both clubs, but it's just crazy how often we're playing them. And I do want to give a quick shout out to this UPSL team in general, because if you haven't been following them all season, they've been scoring goals like crazy. Just last November, they had a 10-0 win over Jackson, Tennessee Boom in their region. They've won their last few games 1-0, 3-1, 7-1, 3-1, 4-1, and 5-0. They have leading goal scorers Eden Clark with 9 goals in the season, Anthony Falpo with 9, Jackson Delkas 8, Kai Pope, who scored that worldly of a goal to chip the keeper to move on with 7 goals. And these are guys who we've known their names ever since this organization started. Jackson Delkus, I remember, was a U16
Right.
Yeah.
when the organization started. I mean, he's like OG, youngest academy player possible when this group started. And if you're looking for players that could eventually find their way to homegrown contracts, Anthony Falpel, Eden Clark, Jackson Delkus, and Kai Pope have to be among them if they don't choose their college careers and what might lie after that. But just incredible work that this group is doing, and they're truly like rising through the St. Louis City Academy organization to get to this level. It's the bridge between the U17s and City 2. So exciting to watch here Friday night.
And if you didn't see the Kai Pope banger last week, I mean, just
that
like
was awesome.
as good as it gets, set up by Jackson Delkus as well with the high press. I mean, it was a St. Louis goal and a half. Just the kids showing their quality with a bit of a banger, a bit of a chipping the keeper while he was out of the box. And but it was that hard work from Delkus that really set it up, allowing Kai Pope to really show his talent. So good work from them all through the game. And I know it was 1-0. I hope you know, if you didn't watch that game, like St. Louis dominated that game. Like it should not have been 1-0. So good work from those guys. We look forward to more. Love Matt. Good comments on that rivalry from top to bottom, starting from the U16s and watching these kids. It's been a blast. So thanks for joining us, guys. We have never missed so many notes in one episode. I mean, we are throwing a chunk of information in the trash can right now, and I apologize for that. Maybe I could have managed minutes better, but a lot's been coming out lately. So it is what it is. Thanks for joining us. Maybe we'll push some of that to next week. Please do join us again. I'm sure there's going to be plenty to talk about. And we're going to keep it coming to you guys weekly on Twitter, on here, in the podcast, and on the radio. Thanks for joining us again. Bye, everybody.
Adios.